Effective stakeholder management is important to ensure project success. In this video, we look at a guide to project stakeholder management. We begin with an overview of project stakeholder management, and it includes all the processes that have to do with identifying the individuals and the groups that could impact or be impacted by the project, analyzing their expectations, analyzing their impact on the project, and developing appropriate strategies to manage their impact and expectations. Stakeholder satisfaction should be considered a very key factor or an objective in project management. In order to successfully manage stakeholders on a project, it is important to undergo the below steps. You need to identify stakeholders. You need to plan stakeholder communications. You need to plan stakeholder management. You need to manage stakeholder communications. You need to manage stakeholder engagement. You need to control stakeholder communications. And you need to control stakeholder engagement. We will look at all these steps in detail in the next slides. Now, each of the steps above requires some inputs, and these inputs are references which could come in the form of documents or other necessary conditions that must be considered to effectively undertake that step. And the results of undertaking a particular step are known as the outputs of that step. In order to arrive at outputs, some tools and techniques must be applied to the inputs, and these tools and techniques are the means of arriving at the outputs. Now, the first step, identify stakeholders. We begin by defining who stakeholders are, and these are persons and organizations that are actively involved in the project or whose interests may be positively or negatively affected by the execution of the project. Stakeholders are also persons that are able to exert some influence on the project. The identify stakeholders process is the process of identifying all people or organizations impacted by the project, documenting relevant information regarding their interests, their involvement, and their impact on project success. Identifying stakeholders early in the project and analyzing their expectations and influence is critical for project success. Now, what are some of the considerations to effectively identify stakeholders? Inputs to help identify stakeholders. We will make reference to our project charter, which gives a brief summary of what the project is about. In case our project has to do with procurement, then our procurement documents will be an important guide to know which stakeholders are involved in procurements. Then we need to consider the enterprise environmental factors, which will include our organizational structure, our organizational culture, the global and the local habits, and the government standards. Then the organization could also have organizational process assets, which could be in the form of stakeholder register templates, lessons learned from previous projects, and stakeholder registers from previous projects. The tools and techniques that could be applied on our inputs to identify stakeholders, which will be the means of identifying the stakeholders, could be stakeholder analysis, expert judgment, and also meetings. So we could use any of these to help identify stakeholders. Our output will be a list of all the identified stakeholders, and this is recorded in a document called the Stakeholder Register. It contains all the details related to the identified stakeholders, and this document needs to be consulted and updated on a regular basis throughout the life of the project, since stakeholders and their interests might keep changing as the project progresses. Now that we have identified our stakeholders, we could effectively now go on to plan stakeholder communications. And this is a process of determining the information needs of each of the stakeholders and defining a communication approach to meet their needs. It will address issues such as who needs what information, when they will need it, how it will be given to them, and by whom. The communication plan allows a project manager to document the most efficient and effective approach to communicate with the stakeholders. The useful inputs to this process will include our project management plan, our stakeholder register, which we got from the previous step, our enterprise environmental factors, our organizational process assets, and tools and techniques that could be considered for use in planning stakeholder communications will include communication requirements analysis, and that is to determine the information needs of the project stakeholders. Then we could make use of various forms of communication technology, such as face-to-face interactions, telephone conversation, fax, email, and meetings. We could use communication models to demonstrate how information is sent and received between two parties. And we could apply various communication methods, such as interactive communication, where there is a two-way exchange of information, or we could use a push communication, which is one way towards the recipients, or pull communication, where the various recipients rather access the required information from a certain repository. Then finally, we could make use of meetings as an effective tool to plan stakeholder communications. And it will be important to always bring the right people to the meeting so that the agenda of the meeting will be achieved. Our outputs of this step will result in a communications management plan, and this plan details how communications will be handled on the project. It contains stakeholder communications requirements, information to be communicated, language to be used, format, content, time frame, and frequency for distribution of information, the persons responsible for sending information, methods or technologies to be used, allocated time and budget allocated for communications, glossary of common terminology, and any other useful information that needs to be updated in the communications management plan. Then we could also update our project documents, for instance our stakeholder register and our project schedule, in case any of these changes as a result of our communications management plan. To the next step, plan stakeholder management. This is the process of developing appropriate management strategies to effectively engage stakeholders throughout the life of the project, taking into account their needs, interests, and potential impact on the project. We now want to look at inputs, documents, and other factors that need to be considered when planning stakeholder management. The project management plan, which includes communications management plans, change management plans, the human resource plan, and all other forms of plans. Now then, the stakeholder register, together with the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, all could be considered in planning a stakeholder management for the project. We could make use of expert judgment, consulting subject matter experts, people with knowledge in specific areas. We could plan stakeholder management by bringing right people to meetings, and we could use various analytical techniques to analyze stakeholder needs and their impact on our project. Our output or outcome of this step will result in a stakeholder management plan, which describes the management strategies required to effectively engage the various stakeholders. And once again, there could be updates to other project documents, such as the project schedule and the stakeholder register. Once we have plans in place for communication and stakeholder management, during the course of the project, the duty of the project manager will be to manage stakeholder communications. This is the process of creating, collecting, distributing, storing, retrieving, and the ultimate disposition of project information as documented in the communications management plan. The inputs to this step will include our communications management plan, which will serve as a guide to undertake this step, work performance reports, and these can be used to facilitate discussions and create communications. Our enterprise environmental factors, together with our organizational process assets, will all be useful inputs to manage stakeholder communications. We could make use of the various communication technologies, the communication models, the communication methods as discussed previously, then various information management systems that we could adopt for our project, performance reporting, which involves collecting and distributing performance information. Our outputs will include project communications. They will be in the form of performance reports, deliverable status, schedule progress, costs incurred, and so on. Then we could have updates to our project management plan and also updates to our project documents, and there could be updates as a result of lessons learned and information that could be useful as historical information for future projects, or could be updated as part of organizational process assets updates. During the project, again, apart from communicating, we could also manage stakeholder engagement, and this is the process of working with the stakeholders to meet their needs or expectations, address issues as they occur, and engage stakeholders appropriately in project activities throughout the life of the project. Proper stakeholder management decreases the risk of the project failing to meet its goals and objectives. The inputs to this step will include our stakeholder management plan, our communications management plan, change log, which lists all changes that have been requested on the project, and organizational process assets. What tools and techniques can we make use here to manage stakeholder engagement? The various communication methods are useful here. Then the project manager needs to display interpersonal skills to relate with stakeholders, and his management skills also comes to bear as very important tools to effectively engage and manage the stakeholders. The results or outputs of this step will be updates to the issue log, there will be change requests, there will be updates to the project management plan to reflect the changes, there will be updates to project documents and organizational process assets. The next step will be to control the stakeholder communications, and this is the process of monitoring and ensuring that the information needs of the project stakeholders are met. So it is not enough just sending the information. It is important to check whether the information needs of the stakeholders are being met. Inputs will include a project management plan, which is the overall guide to the project communications, which are the information that you are sending to the stakeholders, the issue logs, which lists all issues that arise during the course of the project, work performance data, those are the raw performance information you collect from field as the work is ongoing, and organizational process assets. You could make use of the information management systems that are available for use by the organization. You could consult experts. You could bring the right people to meetings to find ways of controlling stakeholder communications. And the results, the work performance data that you collected, you will process into work performance information, which will be meaningful information that could be shared with stakeholders. Then there could be change requests. If you find out that things are not going as planned, there could be change requests, and subsequently there will be updates to the project management plan, the project documents, and the organizational process assets as a result of those change requests. Then we will need to control stakeholder engagement also, and this is the process of monitoring overall stakeholder relationships and adjusting strategies and plans for effective and efficient stakeholder engagement. The inputs include the project management plan, the issue log, the web performance data, project documents. Tools and techniques that could be used here also include information management systems. It could be used expert judgment and meetings. And the results of controlling your stakeholder engagement will be in the form of work performance information. There could be change requests, and subsequently there could be updates to your project management plan. There could be updates to your project documents. There could be updates to your organizational process assets, all as a result of a change request that could arise out of this process. So you've come to the end of stakeholder management, and the final thing to do is to complete an online assessment. And please go to the below site, dexterconsult.com/training/enrollments to register for the course assessment. And when asked to enter a course code, enter the code RFSSTK. Thank you.